One of the reasons that we're really excited to bring these two women together is because each of them, they are making a profound and lasting impact in the lives of others in very distinct ways, but yet equally meaningful. So I'm just really excited. Thank you, Deborah and Christine, for your time. And we are delighted to have you here. So I'm going to just dive right in. And Deborah, maybe you'll help us kick this off. So I think about, impact, and the impact that we seek is really aligned with, as Barbara was talking about, our sense of purpose, to fulfill our purpose. I'm curious about what is your purpose, and if it came to you gradually over the years, or if you had this one aha moment where you realized, you woke up or something and said, yes, this is what I am meant to be doing.
Great opening question. Thank you for having me and giving me the chance to share some thoughts with you. So it's definitely been, I think Barbara nailed it. It's been a journey. I think there have been moments along the way, big and small, that have given me pause to really reflect on what purpose is. And I can take those all the way back to the roots of my faith and my family. And at a very tender age of probably 7 or 8, I remember one Christmas Eve, and which is always a very big family holiday, which we were home and there was a fire. A neighborhood farm was on fire. And so my father and my grandfather and my uncles all raced to help this family put out the fire in their barn. And so Christmas Eve comes, we go to bed, and of course, Christmas morning, Santa, the whole drill. And my dad was not home. So he had worked through the night to help this family put out the farm. And I remember him coming in, he was dirty and he smelled and he was exhausted. And so we had breakfast and he went to bed. So it was a very non-traditional Christmas morning for our family. And I remember my mom saying about the family, they had kids, not my age, but similar. And I remember my mom saying something so profound. She said, she was telling us about the tragedy and their loss, yet they were all safe. And she said, why don't each of you go pick out one of your Christmas presents and we'll give that to the family along with our Christmas dinner. And God, 52 years later, it still brings tears to my eyes. It was one of those God winks where at 7 or 8, I didn't know what purpose meant, but I sure do now, right? So I look at one of those moments in time, and I think that really defined the purpose for me, is recognizing that life is so much more than self. And someone made that comment about raising their daughters beyond self. It's really about using self to serve others. And so as I have progressed in my own journey in finding purpose, I find these moments along the way that clearly illustrate it to me. And I would say that I'm not done with my journey. I think there's more for me to figure out along the way, in my ability to do more, to be more, and give more. That I'm still listening for and watching for those God winks.
And I know, before I get to Christine, I know that you describe yourself as a servant leader. So service is just in your DNA, Deborah. Christine, building on that, how about yourself? What is your purpose? And was it gradual, or did you were you struck by lightning or something?
I just realized I'm a servant leader in a for-profit ecosystem. So I've spent 35 years in corporate America and I work on my own now. My purpose, that it took me a while to get to, so it was gradually, and then there was the aha moment. Mm-hmm. My purpose is to help women grow their wealth, raises, promotions, opportunities, connections, whatever I can do to help women raise their wealth is my purpose. In tech especially, we're underrepresented, we're underpaid. But I do this kind of outreach across all sorts of different industries. And you asked if it happened gradually or if there was an aha moment. And so gradually, yes, I was part of the Volkswagen National Diversity Council. I founded the Women's Network there. I led the Women's Leadership Network at McDonald's when I was there. So there was a steady contribution to the environment that I was part of. But the aha moment happened in all places on a metro train in Chicago. So I'm sitting on the train commuting into the city, and my 21-year-old son is sitting next to me. And we don't really commute together because he puts his headphones on the second that we get on the train. And he's going into his internship. All of a sudden, he takes off his headphones and he looks at me and he says, "What is it like to work for a company with no moral imperative?" And my first reaction was kind of like, ouch. But my second reflection was, he's kind of right. I led the technology team that did mergers and acquisitions, where we were absorbing other companies into our company. And our company was a real estate trust that managed shopping malls. So there's no moral imperative anywhere in this ecosystem. But I still felt like, wait, we're missing something. And all of a sudden the light went off for me. And I said, Henry, every single company I've worked at, I've led one of the top performing teams, and every single team of mine has been the most diverse in my organization. So right now I have 3 Black women who work for me, and they're the only 3 Black women in all of IT. In fact, one of them I knew from a previous life, and I told her, oh, I have a position, you'd be great for it. And she called me and she said, hey, HR is asking me what I should ask for in comp. And I said, oh, tell them 130. And she said, I can't do that. And I said, well, yes, you can. And she said, no, Christine, I'm only making 75 now. She's a single mom, middle school boy, right? And I said, oh, no, you say 130, because I've seen the job description and the range is like 120 to 145. So 130 is right in the middle, and they're not even going to argue with you. And she was like, but Christine, I can't do that. I was like, trust me, this gets you up to market level. She did it. I think she was really nauseous when she did it, but she did it. She got it. And I looked at Henry, I said, do you know what $55,000 that you weren't planning on means to a single mom? It means college savings. It means retirement savings. It means the next job you get, you start there and go up. So I said, I do bring a moral imperative into what I do. So I think that was my aha moment about, yes, there are these general things that we can do to be supportive and to educate, but there are also specific things that make a material difference to those around us. So that's how my purpose really got a lot of definition on a metro train going into downtown Chicago one day.
That's such a great story, and I love what I heard from both of you. It's a generational thing too, right? It's a culture that you're creating at work, but a culture in your home, right? That really brings that to life and gives it another dimension. And it creates that legacy to have it continue on beyond yourself. And by leading by example, it influences others. So then, Christine, you talked a lot. I mean, you certainly shared some meaningful impact. So, in the work that you're doing, what does impact mean to you? And, what impacts are you seeking to make? And know you identified your purpose. So, what impacts are it that you're looking at really?
That's a good. So in my work, I do advisory work inside of teams or businesses that are struggling to get results. So if somebody's saying like too much work, not enough time, or working our butts off and we're not hitting the target, doesn't matter on the industry. Those are the spaces that I work in now, and I can help people figure that out and get results. So I love a good measurement, and I actually use measurements now. In the 2016 election, I was really concerned that we had elevated a leader who spoke so poorly of women. And I thought, girl, you've been advocating for women for a long time, and yet this happened. Like, obviously what you're doing is not driving sustainable change. And that was the year that I started keeping track of the women that I helped get a new job, a promotion, an opportunity that impacted how much money that they made. And that first year that I kept my list, I got 58. And I got that by telling anybody, I'll give you 30 minutes to, if you need to have me review a resume, prep you for an interview, make an introduction, help you research how to negotiate a salary change. Whatever I can do, I will help you. And as I started keeping track of those, I also kind of backed off doing things that weren't driving something that showed the measurable change. So Because, Barbara, you got me thinking about this. I pulled out my calculator and I thought, if I just think about my minimal impact that I've had on those women, and I have the numbers from every year, I just ran a total. Conservatively, I've driven $126 million worth of increased compensation for women in the last 9 years. And that should just keep going up, right? So for me, impact means my intentions aren't enough. If there isn't a number, my intentions might as well be beautiful flowers that are going to fade on my countertop.
Wow. You know, that's like so many things in life. I laugh. I'm like, okay, Barbara, I'm going to do this. You know, I talk about what I'm committed to. And then I'm like, well, tick-tock. Like, what year are you going to do it? Like, it's either now or never, right? This talk doesn't mean anything after a while. Yeah, that's huge. Deborah, how about you?
Yeah. You know, when you really look at it, I had a wise mentor tell me early in my career that, Deborah, you will be good, but you will be great if you can move other people. And so, again, not sure I knew exactly what that meant. But when I look at my impact, I think the place that I wake up every day is how can I be a catalyst to empower, to inspire, and create change? You know, the world is big and small. The problems facing humanity are vast. And yet I often say that if each of us had the ability to focus on just our little corner of the world, and we focused on making that better, stronger, richer in culture and people, that soon all of our little corners would start connecting. And so my definition of impact is, how can I be the multiplier effect to create change in my little corner of the world?
Yeah, I love that. And you certainly have in so many aspects of your life and the work that you do at Empath Health today and here at Impact the Palm Beaches. And I know that you and I have talked so many times that legacy isn't something, you know, that we should think about in the future, right? Legacy is really how you treat people, how you support people, how you connect people, how you multiply, you know, each and every day. But there are so many people who feel like legacy is something to think about in the future, as Barbara just said. TikTok, right? We are here right now, and there is so much need and so much impact that we can make in the world. I'm curious about, and I have my own thoughts on this, I'm curious about what you want to be known for and what legacy you seek to create.
You know, I hope that I'm known for one thing, that I made a difference in someone's life, that I gave a kind word or a hand up, or, you know, the ability to consider their own empowering opportunities to be better or get involved. You know, sometimes you'll hear me say, you know, you got to invite people to the dance, right? You got to invite them, and you got to. But once they get to the dance, you got to ask them to dance. So I think if I were to define my legacy, I would hope it would be that I made someone better because I was in their world.
Well, and I can see you doing that in your words and your actions and in every exchange. And just recently, you had shared a story with me about, I'm going to say, a World War II veteran that your organization, Empath Health, hosted a celebration for this man for his service and his contributions to keeping our country safe. And he was in his 90s. And he had, and I'm going to tell the story wrong, but can you share maybe just a couple sentences about that and the impact and what happened the next day?
Yeah, it was just about a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. We had the privilege. Empath Health is a full life care organization. We also provide end of life care. And Bill was in our care for a while, and Bill was a World War II veteran. We were caring for him at his end of life. And we have the privilege of working with many veterans, and part of our commitment is to celebrate them. And so we welcomed Bill to one of our events to recognize him with a very special pinning honor and ceremony. And Bill at 94 was all dapper in his Sunday finest, and, his medals and his hat, and this joyous look on his face as we got to talk to him and got to know him. And, throughout the conversations, he always downplayed, I'm not a hero. I just did what I needed to do. And, so you look at that humility and you think, wow, and we talk about generational, right? So here I am talking to a World War II veteran, and he's so humble. And that night we pinned him in all of his glory. The audience rose to their feet and celebrated him. And as he was exiting, he said, "I never considered myself a hero, but thank you for making me feel like one tonight." And that night he closed his eyes and he went off to heaven in this joyous way. And when you look, when you talk about impact, he not only impacted the safety and security of our country and his service during the war, but the people in that room that he impacted with his story, with his humility, with his conviction about life and legacy was a gift, a priceless gift.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I know it made such an impact, during one of our epic breakfasts. And, so whether you think about, legacy being a single act or something, a huge celebration, I don't think anyone in that room will ever forget that, nor the difference that you made and you and your colleagues made in his life. So
yeah, a real privilege to be impacted and to offer impact in the space we love.
Thanks for sharing that. Christine, how about you? What do you want to be known for, and what legacy? I know that you've talked a lot about your purpose. Do you hope to leave?
I love what Deborah said about being a multiplier, about scaling. And that's honestly what I hope for. I got a sense of that. I went to a mentoring co-op that I've been part of for a long time. And as I was coming in, I saw a group of women that I recognized, but they were all strangers to each other. It was 6 of them. And as I walked up, one woman said to the other, "Oh, Christine's the one who helped me get my promotion." And then another woman said, no, she's the one who helped me get my raise. And the other one said, "When I got laid off, she helped me find." So I had 3 of 6 of these strangers in this circle. And they had all come back to this mentoring co-op to mentor. So now you start to say, like, okay, this is something where the message doesn't just go one stop, it starts to go in multiple stops and make a difference. I hope my funeral is packed someday with a bunch of women who say that they all think that they're the one that I helped get promoted or get a new job. That would be really, really cool. But on a larger level, I am absolutely certain that capitalism requires democracy in order to be successful, right? At the heart of capitalism is that everyone has a chance to compete for growth and for success. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that capitalism functions well when many people are included in it. So I'm going to aim high and say, I hope my name comes up when people talk about the health of capitalism and democracy in years ahead.
I love that.
Love that. Yeah. So you both have mentioned kind of eulogies here, or, end of life. So, you're reminding me how important it is for us to celebrate others, right? And not to wait until that time in life to share like really heartfelt conversations about what impact that people have had on you in your life. So I do encourage all of you to do that on a more regular basis. And even if you're like having lunch for a friend's birthday and just going around one at a time about what's one thing you really love about that person. I think women are, I've been at ceremonies and women are like, oh, gosh, I don't know how I won that award. It's like, no. Own it,
Own it. Yeah.
enough of all the great stuff that we do. So these are such powerful reminders. Christine, you measure I love how you measure your impact, because again, that really quantifying something makes it so tangible and real. And then it's almost like when we quantified, how many meetings and hours we've done, it's like, wow, that's really, really powerful. So curious, a couple questions. One, do you do that because it really kind of holds you accountable and engaged and just reinvigorated to make more impacts? And how do you help others get engaged? Because I, as much as I'm inspired and I'm hearing you, okay, I've got how do you help others figure out, okay, what does that mean for me? And how do I start quantifying that for myself?
Yeah. So I am just wired to measure, right? It's why I'm so good at my job. And it helps me when I feel overwhelmed and there are a lot of things going on. I can slow myself down and say, what is the outcome that I need? And then I look at all the work that I'm doing and I say, you know what? These things actually don't tie to that outcome. They feel important, but they don't tie. So I can slow them down. So I'm wired that way. I recognize that the rest of the world is not. So a couple of things that I do is I try to tell stories about situations. Stories stick. And you all will remember me sitting next to Henry on the train, and you'll remember me bringing that woman into my company with a huge raise after this call is over. A story sticks. So I try to tell stories. But the other thing that I do is try to find really lightweight, small things that people can do that could make a difference. I brought this up in a meeting the other day, and the response I got was crazy. I told everybody, I only hire women. My lawyer's a woman, my accountant's a woman, my tax person, my profit and loss analyst, my doctor, the people who do my social media. They're not traditional roles that you would think of. Like maybe the social media might be traditionally women, but the rest of them are not. And I will go out of my way to find a competent woman to give my business to, right? Who am I to talk about building other people's wealth if I'm paying a bunch of men to do services for me? So I will kill myself to find a female landscaper, a female house painter, and those small ways that I can make a difference. So that's a way everyone on this call could make an adjustment and look at your service providers and ask yourself, am I giving money to a woman-owned business? Just a thought, a light thing.
That's so intentional, Christine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually, Christine, maybe you could tell, I feel like the approach you took to write your second book that you just published, 2 years ago now. Yeah. You designed it so it did create impact. Maybe you could just talk about that, because someone can write a book and you can get inspired, but you really workshopped it and made it so that people could use it tangibly to get results. Yeah. So, short story behind it. My oldest daughter called me and said, I got a job managing people. What book do I read? And I was thinking like, oh, Brene Brown, completely inspirational. Buckingham, completely theoretical. Oh my God, like a 29-year-old does not need inspiration or theory. Like she just needs to get stuff done and she needs to not make mistakes. So I started sending her things like, what's a way to establish a relationship with your team? What are, 10 questions you should ask your boss before you start so you understand the lay of the land. What are questions you should use in a one-on-one? So I'd send her things in email. She'd use them and respond back, and she'd be like, this was great, or that did not work with a remote team. And so we would go back and forth. And the end result was something she collaborated with me. And I don't know if you all are going to be able to see this, but that's Madeline and me in a coffee shop in Wisconsin writing together. And the book is, if it's blue, it's a tool. And if it's white, it explains a tool. And it's just a book of lightweight, practical tools that help managers. And I thought it was going to be people like Madeline who bought it, who were first-time managers. But the resonance in the last year weirdly has come from people higher in organizations who are saying, like, the pandemic is behind us. There's a lot of economic uncertainty. How do I help my managers do better, get more? And it's been for me,
Barbara, that kind of trying something and then getting feedback from people about what works and what doesn't has been a muscle I've gotten better at as I've gotten older. And I think as we all think about impact, and I know Deborah does this because I've heard her talk about her work, she does things, they work well, she does more. She does things not so great. I've noticed she's not afraid to let them go. So I think that practicality about we want to make impact, but we check ourselves and make sure that we, by the way, I had 5 other managers use the book after Madeline and I wrote it, and they all came back and said like, oh, this part didn't work for me. And we did a restructure based on their experience too. So I don't know that we're ever done, right? Are we ever done?
And I love, Christine, that you describe yourself when you introduce, you are pragmatic, like, and that's what the book is, you know, and there are so many great worksheets in that and tools in that in the book. And we will drop we're going to drop the Modern Management Mentor link in the chat for you in a moment. And I love how you are measuring things, how you are making the impact, how you're acting as that catalyst and that accountability partner as well. And I know that making an impact, Deborah, is deeply personal to you, so much so that you founded an organization down here in Palm Beach called Impact the Palm Beaches. And that over the last 10 years, you're celebrating a 10-year anniversary as well, together with, so many other women. We have granted over $2 million to grassroots nonprofit organizations that are making just transformational change in the community. If someone were to ask you about making a greater impact, what are some of the simple steps you would encourage them to take?
Well, I'm going to start with a good story here because I think Christine is right. It really can tie back to a story. So this is one of those moments along the journey in finding purpose. So from that 7 or 8 year old little girl to warp forward a couple decades at a monumental birthday as I was getting ready to celebrate, I really took time to reflect on all the things that I've been so blessed with, right? A wonderful family and health and happiness and a good career and all of the things. And I kept saying, what do I need to do as I look at celebrating? And I'm not quite as measured as Christine, although she's going to help me get there. But I set 3 goals for myself in preparation for this monumental birthday, which I just had another monumental birthday. So do the math.
I think we're on the same plane. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I got ready, I thought, okay, the 3 goals are, I'm going to do something to enrich my mind. I'm going to do something to enrich my body, and I'm going to do something to enrich my spirit. And so for my mind, I am terribly narrowly focused. I read only nonfiction. I read only about improving my leadership style, my self development. So nothing outside of that space. So I said, okay, and TED Talks, I love TED Talks, but they were only on those subjects. So I said, okay, they send you that little curated TED Talk thing. Here are 3 that we think you'll like. I never pay attention because they're always out there sometimes. That year, I said, okay, I'll listen to whatever you tell me for 1 year. And wow, I learned so many things outside of my scope. And I thought, okay, that's good. So then I thought, okay, what about the body? Well, there's a lot of work that can be done there, but I had always wanted to do a 5K Tough Mudder. And so I said, it's now or never. Either I'm going to get this in or I'm probably not going to get it in. So I was going to do it with my best girlfriend who 30 days prior to the race, she hurt her back, and so she wasn't able to do the competition. So I begged my 16-year-old son, who's like, really, Mom, you're going to make me. I said, please, just come with me. And I really had simple goals. I wanted to finish, didn't care if I was dead last, and I just didn't want to get hurt, right? I didn't want to break any bones or not get hurt. So we go, my son could have easily won the race, but this speaks to, the woman, I think it was Sue, who talked about her daughter raising good kids. I said, go, you can win this, because he was like a gazelle. And he circled back because he knew I was going to struggle with getting over that 8-foot wooden wall thing. I just like couldn't, he just like leaped over it. And I'm like, oh, Lord have mercy. So but I tried and he tried to lift me and I'm like, I'm going to go around. I'm good. And the long and short of it, we get to the finish line. I am like elated, like in my head. We've gone through every piece of mud and uneven surface and, hurt and get to the finish line. I take one step across the finish line and doesn't my ankle twist? And I break my ankle at the finish line. I fall down. I can see my husband. My son is there going, are you okay? I get up. I'm like, I'm okay. I really wasn't, but I had so much adrenaline, it didn't matter. So got that done, checked that off. Of course, I was in a boot for like 12 weeks and rehab and all that. But anyway, I did it, checked it off, Christine. So now I'm 2 for 2. And so the last one was the spirit. And although I think you can always work on your faith, I thought, well, there's got to be something else that I can do to really honor my commitment to empowering other people. Could I serve on a board? I had invitations, but it just wasn't there. My birthday comes and goes, and now I'm getting nervous because I hadn't finished this last third leg to this trifecta. And later that year, and several months after my birthday, I was hit with the idea of what Impact 100 was. It was a women's collective giving movement that was happening around the country and in several continents, including Australia and London and now Canada. And I had the chance to meet the founder, and the idea was so simple. It was so profound. So I gathered a group of smart women and I said, hey, what do y'all think of this? And they're like, it's brilliant. Let's do it. And within 100 days, we spoke to 117 women who raised their hand and said, we want to give collectively, each giving $1,000 to create these $100,000 impact grants. And that was 10 years ago. About 1,000 women later, over $2+ million in giving locally back to our local community. And probably the greatest gift of all that impact, right? By making our little corner of the world better. You see where my pieces start fitting together, trying to make our little corner of the world. It empowered women to step up and into new space and with new people that they may never have had the chance to be a part of. I would have never known Nancy Rizzuto. Wasn't in my neighborhood, didn't have kids in my school, wasn't in my same profession, didn't go to my church, didn't live in the same community. The list goes on of how we would have not met. But through impact and a shared belief in coming together that we're better together. And with women, unlike sometimes our male counterparts, we have this really incredible ability to learn with and from each other. So it becomes this really dynamic and rich experience. And, if I were to say what, my advice might be is raise your hand, step out. There is so much opportunity that even if it seems small, it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, I love that, Deborah. I think about you. The word multiplier just keeps coming around for me, right? And that was powerful. And I think the power of, again, investing in women, whether, I would encourage, Barbara and I are so committed to the 30 minutes, but whatever it is, you never know, to Christine's point, you've helped women, ask, secure more money, ask for new jobs, all those things. They just, and I have to say that one of the things, it reminds me, Christine and Deborah, what you said about Barbara. That woman has a 6 degrees of separation with everyone. And everyone that, we were walking down the street in New York City 15 years ago, and I turn around and she's hugging somebody that she knows and making an introduction. And so your impact, Barbara, just speaks so loudly and is just, so aligned with your core values. And I just think about all of us, the impact when we're doing good in whatever that means to us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so true. And Nancy, you're right there beside me, right? And Deborah, it's interesting because I'm involved in a women's giving group. And at first I thought, I want to make a direct gift because then there's, because I don't want my gift to be diminished. But joining the women's giving group has been so enriching in ways I didn't anticipate. Certainly the excitement of really making a greater impact because you're bringing funds together. But just even being with like-minded women and learning more about all these incredible organizations in my local community that I didn't even know about. And then even being on that task force that picks, we all pick which themes we're focused on, but then I got to help pick the nonprofit and vote and listen to all those presentations. It was just exceptional experience. So for those of you, there's a lot of different giving groups, and I encourage you to consider joining a women's giving group. It can be a wonderful experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess from a final kind of question to each of you, are there any resources that either of you would suggest, whether that's for inspiration or guidance to women who are looking to kind of discuss or elevate kind of explore their impact that they're seeking to make? I'd love, we'd love to have you share that. Well, we will share it in the recap, but here as well.
I'll start. If you want to do just some lightweight things, Emily in your phone on Instagram, she's a measured, pragmatic DC insider who can translate bills as they're starting to be crafted and tell you what the real impact would be. So Emily in your phone is one of my favorites. I also love Builders on Instagram. It is an equally balanced group of right-leaning and left-leaning folks who talk about the middle space where really 85% of us are. I love Supermajority, which Cecile Richards had part in developing. It's a group of political activation that looks for elections that are particularly important to women, since we represent actually the majority of human beings in the United States. I love Unify America. They're doing democracy circles. They're just getting started, but they're doing some really interesting things to bring people who disagree together to solve problems in communities. And they're having wild success. And I am totally with Deborah on this one. I love supporting local nonprofits. I love that whole concept of corner of the world, because then I see the impact that they're having inside of Chicago. Like tomorrow I'm on a committee that's running something called the Little Black Dress Night. We fund the Young Women's Leadership Society at a Black and Brown high school here in Chicago that supports kids who are going to go to college to study tech. And these are kids who cannot afford like the flight to get to their school or their supplies. And so these practical things, those are some practical lightweight things from me.
Deborah, how about you?
Yeah, I'm a big podcaster and I don't discriminate male or female, but I'm a big podcaster. Some of my favorites are On Leadership, which is a Franklin Covey production. I also like How I Built This. I think it's a wonderful entrepreneurial learning the stories of how some of America's biggest and smallest companies have come up through purpose and passion and commitment is always really good. Drawn to, of course, many books, Brene Brown and others on self and service. And actually reading a book now called The Amen Effect by a rabbi. I know that you might say it's interesting for me, a Catholic girl from the Midwest, but this is a remarkable book about humanity and a lot of it grounded in Jewish faith traditions. But, as I look at, and Christine talking a lot about democracy, which maybe we need to go back to social studies and really look at that. But it starts with treating people, in humanity a whole lot better than we are today. And I think she speaks really beautifully to that.
Christine and Deborah, thank you so much. You really nailed it. You've inspired us in so many ways, but then you've also really given us nuggets to act on and ways that we can really reflect and think about what it is, what impact it is that we're seeking to elevate and to take action. So just so grateful for you spending this time with us.